Hello, I'm Johanna Vondeling. As many of you may know, for the past 2 years I've been working from Perth, Australia. Probably a few of you have been wondering what it is that I do all day down there on the other side of the planet. Well, in addition to my day-to-day work with international sales and business development, I do spend a lot of time studying the industry, talking to experts, trying to figure out what the important trends are that are affecting the industry and are likely to affect berrett-koehler. So for the next few minutes, I'd like to share some of those observations with you. The publishing industry is going through a period of rapid and radical change. Everyone in the industry is experiencing volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Just about every night I go to sleep thinking I have a little bit of grip on what's coming next, only to wake up the next morning and realize the industry has reinvented itself all over again overnight. It just did it today. Today, the entire industry is under pressure from a host of factors ranging from the explosion in self-publishing to the emergence of new technologies and new business models, the globalization of the industry, and some fundamental changes in consumption habits. All of this is happening at a time when the customers in many of the countries in which we operate are experiencing profound and prolonged recession. I can say with confidence that the print book is not dead, not by a long shot, but publishers, as Steve mentioned, are needing to invest in processes, infrastructure, and personnel necessary to pivot to the digital future and at the same time maintain their traditional publishing practices. It's a very complicated and expensive juggling act. Many of you are familiar with Steve Personi's 10 Awful Truths About Book Publishing. This document with more statistics is reproduced in your packets. I won't belabor these points, but the story they tell is that the pressure on traditional publishing continues to intensify. The number of books published continues to skyrocket. Thanks to the closure of Borders and some other bookstores, the shelf space in bookstores continues to shrink. And the number of books that a publisher can reasonably expect to sell is shockingly small. Now, the boom in digital sales and digital publishing is certainly exciting, but you need to sell an awful lot more lower-priced ebooks in order to make up for the slide in print sales. To give you a statistic, in 2011, the industry as a whole saw a 117% increase in ebook sales, but a 17% decline in print sales, for a net combined print and ebook sales decline of 5.8%. The global player, most on everybody's mind, is, of course, Amazon. They're the 800-pound gorilla in terms of online sales, and they've been gradually squeezing publishers for more mandatory co-op, which is effectively pressuring them for deeper discounts. Some publishers who have refused to capitulate to Amazon have seen their entire ebook portfolios removed from the site. Up until the introduction of the agency model, under which publishers rather than the retailers set the price for the ebook, Amazon was estimated to have 90% of the ebook business. Their entry into the self-publishing market and their formation of their own publishing program suggests that they're intent on monopolizing not only the retail chain, but actually the entire publishing supply chain. The recent Department of Justice suit against Apple and 5 publishers over the introduction of the agency model has essentially been a really big gift to Amazon. I can talk about this more in the question and answer session if you would like, but it's berrett-koehler's position that this development has effectively shored up and emboldened a monopoly in order to save just the appearance of fair competition. How are publishers responding? A lot of publishers are really struggling with the rapid pace of change. Many are seeing their net sales drop. Some, like Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, have had to declare bankruptcy. Certainly, we at berrett-koehler have had days where we've just been pulling out our hair at the flurry of new business models and the pace of change. But the most successful publishers, I would argue, are those who are embracing change when it plays to their strengths. We at berrett-koehler are excited because so many of the trends and opportunities play to our strengths as a small publisher that can pivot without a lot of bureaucracy. berrett-koehler's mission-driven commitment to collaborate with our partners is also an asset in an age when no publisher can afford to go it alone. And many of the opportunities that are now in play are actually enabling us to leverage investments we made many years ago, long before we had any idea whether they would pay off. The opportunity that's getting the most attention, of course, is the transition to e-reading. Readers of all genres and all ages are increasingly consuming books digitally. The proliferation of new devices and platforms is accelerating this phenomenon. In 2011, ebooks accounted for 7% of consumer spending, but 14% of units purchased relative to print. And this number can actually vary pretty wildly, as Steve mentioned. Certain genres like romance and mystery can really be blown off the charts. For example, in the mystery genre, ebooks accounted for 17% share of consumer spending, but a 25% share of units purchased. It's not all rosy, of course. Having to manage and adapt to all these new platforms is making life much, much more complex for publishers. And there are worrying signs that that readers are simply reading less. Our competition these days isn't so much with other publishers as it is with the attention that readers are devoting on their devices to other things, such as posting on Facebook, or in my case, playing entirely too much Words with Friends. So, okay. Embracing a global marketplace. This is another important trend in the publishing business, both for print and digital products. English language publishers in the U.S. are increasingly looking beyond their borders for new customers. Many believe that's going to be the strongest site of growth, perhaps even in developing markets. This certainly seems to be the case with the ebooks, where we're seeing countries like Korea and Australia outpace the U.S. in the rate of ebook adoption. All this said, the international marketplace is really volatile. The UK and Europe are in recession now, and it's really hitting our international partners there very, very hard. They're reporting that 2012 is the worst year for them since 2003, and that print book sales are slipping up to 30% year on year. There's also a great deal of downward pressure on prices. A book that might sell for $19.95 in the U.S., for example, needs to be priced no higher than $5 or $6 in India in order to find a market there. One way in which berrett-koehler is embracing the global marketplace is with the formation of a partnership earlier this year with HarperCollins India. These photos here show berrett-koehler books featured at the Delhi Book Fair that I was fortunate to attend in February, where our partnership was launched. HarperCollins now prints many of our books locally in India and prices them to meet local market needs. They've shown themselves to be really effective marketers, and the readers there are really responding to our content. Two of our books, I Moved Your Cheese and Kiss That Frog, are currently on the top 10 bestseller list at the nation's largest retail chain, Landmark. And through June, HarperCollins has sold, in just 4 months or so, 38,000 berrett-koehler books in India. So thanks to this partnership, we're seeing a healthy new revenue stream with a very low risk of returns. Our unusual printing program with HarperCollins is a data point in a much larger trend towards printing closer to the customer. When you think about it, it's really crazy to be printing a book in, say, Oklahoma and shipping it to New Delhi. Shipping is costly and slow. It's bad for the environment, and publishers often lose sales when their publishing partners don't have the necessary inventory to fill rush orders. So increasingly, publishers are forming relationships with overseas printers, relationships that can both reduce returns and cut the speed to market. berrett-koehler is now working with its printer partners to research if it's possible for us to print locally in the UK, Asia, and Australia. One last significant trend I wanted to address is the move away from traditional marketing techniques such as print advertising to a more direct engagement with the customer. New technologies and changes in consumption habits have made this transition not only possible but absolutely essential. Facebook and Twitter now help publishers field direct feedback from customers and leverage customers' enthusiasm for their books. And publishers can now facilitate conversations around those books. We at berrett-koehler feel like this development is actually playing to one of our historic strengths. berrett-koehler has been a direct marketer, publisher since its founding. That's how we got started. So it's very natural for us to be in direct conversation. Okay, so what's next? What's next? I think the one thing that we can count on is more change. I think that the path to success amid all these changes is likely to be complicated and messy. It will require innovation and experimentation and what Rick calls fast failures, right? And the publishers who will succeed will, I would predict, they will know their audiences intimately. They will have conversations with those customers that will help inform their editorial and production decisions, and as well as their marketing investments. I predict they will both sell direct to customer and collaborate with a wide range of partners rather than focusing exclusively on just a single narrow player like Amazon. They will position themselves as online content providers rather than print publishers who also happen to sell ebooks. They will invest in the personnel and infrastructure necessary to serve a global marketplace that has diverse demands but a very limited attention span. And they will make their content available wherever, however, whenever the customer wants it. I think this is all obviously a really tall order, but in my opinion, berrett-koehler already does much of what typifies the profile of the successful publisher of the future. I'm feeling very optimistic, and I'm convinced that berrett-koehler is going to thrive through these coming changes. Thank you.